Come on, Exiles. Welcome to the second Pod of Exile, juiced by Mobalytics. I am here with the MOBA crew, ready to talk about all things Path of Exile 2 Dawn of the Hunt, which releases on April 4th for PC and consoles. There's a lot of chatter about whether the patch is huge, awesome, exciting, or just overwhelming. Well, today with these three guys, we are going to go over everything this patch has to offer, and we will end with our conclusions on whether or not this is giant for PoE 2 or if this is totally not what the game needs right now. So we have a massive list of things to talk about that's being added to the game. I think we should start out with, I think it's the headline feature for Dawn of the Hunt. It's the Huntress. The first brand new class added to Path of Exile 2 since early access has begun, and alongside her come a few interesting skills and a brand new weapon, the Spear. Sirgog, I would love to hear your take to start off. What do you think about the Huntress?
I think the concept of an agile melee fighter is something like the monk was one of the most popular classes already. This is a second agile melee fighter. It doesn't, not pure melee, but I think it's something that will play well. Like the things that have made the monk good should also apply here. Now, I'm not talking about power here. I'm just talking about the play style, the way it'll feel throughout the campaign. The next question is whether they get the power right, and we just don't have the information to tell on that yet.
Do you think they're going to start with uber busted spear skills since this is, the first pass, so that they can just nerf and maybe go down over time? Or do you think they're going to be a little safe? Like, are we going to get a... I'm thinking of Diablo 4's first new class and the situation we had there. Do you think we're going to see 70% of players ending up on the Huntress as either the Amazon or the Ritualist, or a little bit more diversity?
Well, Neversink did a poll of his followers on the website formerly known as Twitter, and I believe that it was looking like 43% of people were planning on league starting the Huntress. This is based on nothing about power. This is just based on their preference. And that's out of a sample size where 18% were not intending to play. So you're looking at 43 out of 82, so that's slightly over 50%. Now, that assumes power parity. If there's a clear power imbalance one way or another, then of course we might see that be wildly different. But I'm feeling like the Amazon will be the most played class unless there's a clear power outlier. And in that case, it's not a problem if the Amazon gets 20% and the Ritualist gets 15% of the ladder, because more people will be starting it. I do think, however, it's going to be a real problem if we see 45% playing the Amazon and 35% playing the Ritualist. And I guess we're just going to have to see.
Yeah. It is pretty shiny and new, and it does look exciting with the combo-based gameplay. Dream or Lolcohol, what are you guys thinking about the skill design associated with the Huntress and Spear skills? You think they're going to achieve what they're looking for and what they showcased in that initial reveal?
I mean, I think a lot of the classes have this, this combo-based design. It's just whether or not they can actually keep to that focus and maintain it into the endgame, and for it to actually be something that most people actually interact with, right? Come up to a rare, tanky rare, I'm going to, throw my combo at it, and it's not just spamming one button because it's the most effective skill, which is like, what we've seen so far. So, I mean, I think it is a cool concept, and I think that PoE 2 can pull off the combo mechanic. It's just, it's a case of balancing usually. Like it has to be something. Jonathan touched on this in the Q&A. It has to be something that the player kind of, they just kind of go through it naturally. It's like a natural progression of a combo. It doesn't feel forced. It's you use this thing in this particular situation, and then you get rewarded for doing so. For me, the Huntress, it doesn't really do it for me. It's not really something I'm that interested in, I think, but I do think the ascendancies are pretty cool, and I quite like the Ritualist. The extra ring slot thing is kind of crazy. That's going to be a very powerful end game ascendancy. It's going to be extremely powerful with good gear. And I also really like the parry mechanic. That is very cool as well, and not something that I really expected. Okay. The parry, it being a like the way you hold it down and then it just like automatically power. I expect it to be more like a timed thing, because we already actually have that in the game, right? With the there's a reservation skill for the shield that does the exact same thing where you
magma barrier.
Magma
like that?
barrier, that's right. Yeah, you have like a good timing, right? You like use it, and for like a very short window, you have like an infused shield, and then you have like a fire explosion if you actually block. So yeah, I think the parry thing will be cool. And yeah, the Huntress overall it looks interesting. It looks like an interesting class.
An interesting thing with parrying and that mechanic, Lolcohol, it looks like that's a surefire way to generate frenzy charges, and those seem to interact a lot with all the different Huntress skills. I think or the spear skills. I think Jonathan said every single spear throw skill interacts with frenzy charges in some large way. Do you think they're going to really try to play into that sort of active generation style for charges as opposed to what we saw a lot with power charges by the end of 0.1, wherein it was like auto generation essentially, right? I wonder if they're going to lean into that. Do you think it's like a preview?
It was something that I was looking at when I was looking at the Ascendancy, especially with the Elemental Infusion, where it's when you consume a power charge, trigger this infusion. And trying to immediately, my first thought was, how do we generate charges as automatically as possible, right? You don't want to be, and then you go like, okay, combat frenzy, parry, this is this, okay, and then how do you dispel them, or how do you consume them? So in the end game, you kind of need to do that, right? Because the pacing is, and also with the combos, the pacing just doesn't give you time to stand around. You need to be generating it on the fly, and I think that also ties in with all the combo stuff we saw with the Huntress, which looks so cool. And I know it'll be great in the campaign, but is it going to work in the end game? I don't know. And I think possibly something they if they want to get that combo based gameplay working in the end game, they need to slow the monsters down quite a bit, because the moment you have a haste aura, for example, I don't think that should exist on monsters. We don't have it. They shouldn't have it. So if there's no time for players to set up and then do their combo, then you're never going to have that kind of combo-based gameplay. So I would say that's hopefully something that we're going to see. But I don't know. I don't know how it's going to feel. There's so many unanswered questions with this, with Huntress. By the way, what do we mean when we say Huntress, right? When we say Huntress, I guess you're talking about the starting position on the tree and the ascendancies, right?
That's it.
Versus spear skills.
Which is everyone.
Because my first thought was, oh, these spear skills look really cool. Is everyone just going to play it on Deadeye?
Right.
But the thing is, as I was going through this, I was saying, man, there are so many unanswered questions that it's almost impossible to theory craft at this point. You can maybe like think maybe if this then that would work, but when I was going through this, I was like, man, I don't know. It could be really cool. At least I'm talking about the Ascendancy now.
Yeah.
But in terms of the gameplay, spears look super, super fun. Looks like Sirgog was saying, monk. It's just like in, out, dashing, throwing, exploding, freezing. That's the kind of gameplay I like.
Yeah, I like that too. And Dreamcore, I want to go back to you because you said it doesn't do it for you. Are you more of a fan of big bonk, totem-esque style gameplay, and you don't like the agile spear skills, like the monk skills? Or what? Why isn't it tantalizing for you? I'm really curious.
Yeah, I usually play like very tanky ascendancies, things that can just like stand in the heat of battle and just absorb damage, right? Rather than sort of like fast pace in and out, avoiding hits and that sort of thing. That's just kind of always the type of archetype that I gravitate towards. Doesn't matter what game I'm playing, right? I'll always end up on some kind of like tank or something based around absorbing damage, regen, that kind of stuff.
No, that makes.
But go on.
For it.
Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, well, that makes a lot of sense, and we can return to the Huntress, but 3 new ascendancies, and one of them was the Smith of Kitava Dreamcore. I'm very curious to hear everyone's thoughts on this because it seems to be very polarizing, okay? Because I saw a lot of people saying, oh my gosh, this is so weak. Who's ever going to play this ascendancy? And then I click on a Dreamcore video and he's like, oh, look at this. Look at all these defensive options. This is so good. Arrows the same way. I watched his video on it. But other people are like, DOA, I'm never going to touch this thing. Ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
So what do you guys all think about it?
People are going to have different thoughts on that ascendancy because you kind of have to think of it in the context of current PoE right now, where having a lot of damage and just killing everything as quick as you can is the best defense, right? You just go through a map, and as long as you can just have this damage that kind of like radiates from your character, think of Spark, right? Just radiates from your character. All of these projectiles are hitting monsters before they even get to you, and everything's dying. But I think if they achieve what they would, I mean, for the people who missed it, they did discuss balance in the Q&A, and they did kind of get around to that, and they were talking about how this is probably going to be a pretty nerf-heavy patch. I mean, realistically, that's what's going to happen. There's going to be many nerfs, and I think most people who are experienced with the game will understand that that is what needs to happen, right? That's the necessary thing that is there, because the game was just completely out of control. And so if it's the case that you can't really get to that stage where you're just one-shotting everything, you are going to want to have some kind of defenses or some way, like the Huntress, to be able to move in and out of combat to be able to avoid, getting hit. And the opposite to that is being able to stand in the middle of monsters and just tank hits. And that's kind of what the Smith is going to be able to do with a lot of the options that Ascendancy has.
Especially when you pull out your anvil in the middle of combat and slam on it for 4 seconds. Because you're going to do that, right, Sirgog?
I'm not sure. I'm not really not sure about that skill. I mean, I thought that was going to give you like a duration-based buff, but based on the footage, it seems to give you exert. So that's what it looks like. It has like a little exert icon on the skill, and it seems to like lower one number each time they use an attack in the footage. So maybe it's that. I don't know, but I hope it would give you a lot of attacks after you like stand there AFK in a map for like 5 seconds, anviling you're probably getting hit by like they've got that footage there, right? They've curated that footage, okay? The realistic footage that they should have shown was a bunch of ranged monsters just owning the character while he's bashing on the anvil, right? Because that's what's actually happening in PoE. Let's be real,
Maybe.
So, yeah.
Maybe. What do you think, Sirgog? You thinking it's going to be a DOA skill?
The skill let's just say I am not going in with high expectations for that particular skill. That said, the Ascendancy overall really looks interesting. I think there's this thing where you want a bit of a toolkit in your character. You've got to solve certain amounts of defense somewhere. You've got to solve damage somewhere. And it seems like there's much more variance in Path of Exile 2 compared to 1 as to what you generally expect to get out of your Ascendancy. In 1, you pretty much always want damage on your Ascendancy, and anything else is a bonus. In 2, you've got to solve these somewhere, but it doesn't really matter which one you solve in your Ascendancy, which one you solve on the passive tree, which one you solve on gearing. And that's where I think the Smith of Kitava could be quite solid, is that it's probably the best defensive archetype that we've got, and then you solve your damage elsewhere.
I think that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, it was the same. I remember in Path of Exile 1. Sorry, I'm just talking about it. But when the Warden came out, a lot of people said, "Oh, this is a trash class because it has no defenses." But the thing people don't realize is there's so much damage on the Ascendancy, it frees up the rest of your class to be much more defensive on your tree and on your gearing, and that's what's really, really cool about this class. Initially, when I saw this, I was like, it looks a little bit lame, but the more you look at it, it's so flexible, and you're able to just like really customize your character, and then there's so much defense on it that you can really push your damage, like Dream and Sirgog were saying, on the tree, on your other piece of gear. You can really be greedy with your suffixes, maybe go for like crit or something like that, because you've just got everything else is solved for you. So that's where the damage comes from, is not having to waste, well, not waste, but you're not having to spend points on the tree and on your gear, so you can really just lean into the damage there. That's where it's coming from.
Yeah. No, that's totally sensible. Arrow was talking about how he's going to try to make his Shattering Palm build work on the Smith of Kitava, because he can just go, I think it's 21 points to some node on the passive skill tree that allows you to get, what is it?
Max fire res based on your uncapped fire resistance,
and it like solves your Ellie res almost entirely, and then you just spend the rest of everything on offense. It's so cool. That didn't come to my mind when I first saw it. I clung onto the anvil, and I was like, "There's no way. There's no way."
The other thing that jumps out at me. Like, there is something in this new expansion that's going to be phenomenal for damage in general, but it comes at the expense of wearing a helmet that is. I mean, it's got life and chaos res, but it's not otherwise defensively a powerhouse. And that's, I think it's called the Deepest Tower.
Yep.
That's the one that causes you to treat enemies within 6 meters of you as being on low life, which in conjunction with that cluster that is a little bit east of due south on the passive tree, halfway between Mercenary Start and the edge of the tree, there is something that has, when you are on, enemies that are on low life that you hit, you are lucky for damage against them, and the whole cluster gives you 240% increased damage with hits against enemies on low life. So that's something that you can get. If you can get your defenses somewhere else, i.e. not your helmet and not with a bunch of passive points, and that's what the Smith of Kitava allows you to do, then you can take maximum advantage of that. And especially if you're using a wide damage range weapon, if your weapon has 40 to 160% damage range like all endgame crossbows do, then being lucky is 20% more damage, as well as your 240% increased. So that's something that comes to my mind when I'm thinking Smith of Kitava. The fact that the Smith of Kitava is solving a lot of your defenses means that you can then go much harder into something like that.
Yeah, there's going to be a ton of interesting new uniques, hopefully, to pair like the Deepest Tower, which I think you wrote an article about on Mobalytics.
Correct.
Sirgog, right? Yeah, that's going to be super interesting to experiment with that. The 100+ new uniques and these other 2 ascendancies that we're having coming into the game, the Tactician and the Lich. Now, I don't know about you guys, but between the 2, I think the Lich just blasts the Tactician. Is this like a consensus? Is anybody here really excited about what the Tactician is offering? You're waiting to see what's in game. Just like reading over the nodes, though, the way it buffs, is it ballista or is it summon totems, like the skill speed, and they only attack when you attack those nodes? They almost seem like not that great compared to what you see on the Lich. Anybody here hyped for the Tactician?
I think it looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
The most interesting thing is totems only use skills when you fire an attack projectile. I think there's probably something really broken with that. Persistent buffs, 50% less reservation. Depending, maybe we get
that one's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, if we get some more support gems, I think it's pretty interesting. It's not immediately obvious what it's going to excel at, but I think this is a kind of class that might be sleeper, and then later in the league, someone's going to be like, check this out, and everyone's suddenly going to play Tactician.
I think the most powerful thing on that ascendancy is the pinned enemies cannot perform actions. Now, pinning enemies is a lot easier than...
I think Dreamcore.
I
went out?
Oh, you could hear him? Oh, I couldn't hear him. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh.
I can hear him now.
Continue.
You're good, Dream.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think the most powerful thing on that ascendancy is the pinned enemies cannot perform actions. Because that's... most conditions that you can put onto enemies are kind of like freeze and things like that. Takes a while to build up. Pin is actually very easy to set up. And if enemies can't perform actions, they literally can't do anything. They are basically frozen. Like that's what this is saying. So they can't move, they can't attack, they can't use spells, they can't do anything. And I'm not sure if there's ways to scale pin duration, things like that, but that is extremely strong. Just if you pin a boss, they're just standing idle, doing nothing, right? And you can pin much easier, like I said, than building up freeze. So that is something that's really strong, I think. And in mapping, you can pretty much guarantee that when you're just throwing out projectiles, you're just pinning a bunch of stuff all the time, and none of those monsters can respond with anything. So that's quite strong.
Completely broken. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
See, I don't know anything. Look at that. You're so right, especially if freeze gets nerfed or something, which I expect to probably happen. At least something changing with freeze, because it does seem beyond busted. Pin might be the new thing, you know? Tactician might be really strong.
Yeah, that's really strong on that ascendancy for sure. And obviously, like Lolcohol said, the less reservation, that thing is... You also get 8% increased spirit on the small node before that. So that is very strong, being able to just reserve a bunch of stuff. I mean, obviously, we don't know how heralds and things like that are being hit in the patch, but surely there's going to be some interesting options for reservations on that ascendancy.
Now, Lolcohol, this might be really small brain from me, but you said that there might be a broken interaction between you not be it only firing your ballista or totem only firing when you are firing off something. How? I'm very
Yeah.
curious. Like, is there an associated buff with that, or is it that the only line on the node? I might be
No,
misremembering.
It says totems have 30% more skill speed. Totems only use skills when you fire an attack projectile. I'm just looking at that and I feel like there is something there.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Are ballistas those kind of totems, right?
I
Yeah.
believe so. Yes. Yeah. Because I think totem builds are you place it down, you run around in a circle, kinda. But this is you have to actually be shooting. I guess you can move while shooting. In PoE 2, so maybe it's a little bit different. That's how I've always imagined totem gameplay, right?
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I was maybe thinking more for bosses, but man, I'm not a totem guy actually. Maybe it's just focus ballista support. All right. Okay, never mind. It might suck. I don't know.
I don't know either. Okay, everybody though is talking about how busted the Lich is, especially because now you can socket a jewel to empower the jewel into an ascendancy. That's pretty interesting. That's new. I mean, they're going funky with these ascendancy classes. The Smith of Kitava, this part of the Lich. What are your thoughts on Lich, Sirgog? You got any quick thoughts?
I think there's a lot of really crazy stuff available in it. I am a bit less sold on the jewel socket. I feel like you're basically getting 2 jewels for an ascendancy point. And okay, granted, it's your best jewel and it's doubled. So that is better than getting 2 jewel slots, but it's not much better than getting 2 jewel slots. So if you've got a 9 or 10 jewel and an 8 or 10 jewel, then you can say it's like 5% better than getting 2 jewel slots. I feel like that's a pretty high opportunity cost to pay. That said, there are a bunch of other things in there that are exciting, especially the 4-point rightmost side. I'm just going to bring up the name of that node.
Yeah, go for it.
You mean Eternal Life?
That's the one, yeah. Your life cannot change while you have energy shield, and it has the precursor, which is 10% of damage taken bypasses energy shield. So essentially this is 10% of less damage taken when you have non-zero energy shield. But there's also just a bunch of really fancy things that can happen there, because anything that's added in the future that says something akin to what's that belt that drops from Cyrus in Path of Exile 1? It's like 35% of
Supreme
Burden of Truth.
Yeah, 35% of non-chaos damage, because in PoE 1 chaos damage bypasses ES, but 35% of non-chaos bypasses ES. Like something like that just becomes explosively good with Eternal Life, and I feel like that's going to be something that there'll be an interaction like that added to the game at some point. There might even be one now that I can't think of.
It's on out series Disdain, but I think that's probably gone, right?
Oh, yeah, that's gone.
The bypass. So, and I think I checked this yesterday. I believe that's the only way, like right now, that's in the game. Obviously, other than this new node that's being added. The only thing to say about this node here is that the fact that that Eternal Life node exists basically limits design space for them in the future in terms of like damage bypassing ES on other things, because it's like now they always have to remember that this ascendancy exists, and whenever that ascendancy uses any of these modifiers, it's just less damage taken for them most of the time, right? Which is a bit of a weird thing, but for the Eternal Life node, your life cannot change while you have no energy shield. That's going to be... There's a lot of weird stuff that could happen from that node, and we will have to wait and see how it works in-game. For example, there's a lot of questions like, if you get hit by 1 hit of damage, just 1 hit, there's enough to kill you outright, do you die? Or do you just lose your energy shield, right? Because
that's really important.
So that's one thing. I personally hope that you die still, because otherwise they've got a bit of a problem there where now they kind of have to design all of the boss mechanics to shotgun because of this one ascendancy, which is just like, let's not have that in the game, right? But otherwise, like there's some other things, for example, could you do chaos inoculation and then spend life, right? Because you don't actually spend the life, it's not there. I would say probably not, because it probably checks that it wants you to actually have that life, even though it doesn't actually spend it. But there's
able to spend life, right? With that, that's my rating of it. If you've got
Yeah,
300 life currently,
it says
and
your life cannot change. Yeah, how
you're
I
unable to
would,
use a skill that costs 1 life.
yeah, well, I would read it the other way around. I would say that you spend the life, but it doesn't change. So I mean, it just depends to see exactly what's going to happen with that. But there's a bunch of unanswered things, and I kind of look forward to seeing. Yeah, the black doubt as well, which is being brought up in chat right now, is a unique body armor which has the line "damage over time bypasses energy shield." So with that modifier right there, you would literally be invulnerable to damage over time until you lose all of your energy shield, which is ridiculous.
Surely it doesn't work that way, right?
Well, that is actually how it would work right now if that
See it
body
in
armor is unchanged,
that'd be
because
crazy.
the soulless form, it has literally been designed. That's why it has 10% of damage taken by past energy shield, because it's a prerequisite node, and it's saying now you get 10% less damage taken. Basically, that's the design of that node.
Wow. So a lot of
Yeah,
powerful, or at least on the Smith in this one, a lot of powerful defensive nodes, right? Introducing new ways.
Yeah,
to be
I like
defensive.
that. I like
Yeah.
that as well. I think I think we discussed this in the last podcast.
Yeah.
One of the most interesting things in PoE 1 is the amount of interesting defensive mechanics that you can interact with on any character. And them adding more and more interesting ways to solve defenses in PoE 2 is always going to be welcome, I think. So these are some fun additions. I mean, the Ritualist is the same. I made a video earlier about the Ritualist.
Yeah.
And the Ritualist has a lot of defensive stuff going on in the Ascendancy. It's got, I think, maybe 4 notables that are all defensive based. So yeah, there's a lot of defensive stuff going on all of these ascendancies they've added.
For the Ritualist, I actually haven't dove too deeply into it. Do you want to talk about a few of the defensive nodes there?
Yeah, so one of them's all to do with charms. It allows you to socket an additional charm, and it also allows a notable after that one allows you to actually activate charms if you don't have charges. It can spend 25% of your maximum mana instead to activate them. So it's basically like because mana is kind of easier to sustain than charm charges in most situations. You can basically confirm that you can get some of those defensive things off. So, you're not going to get frozen. You can get out of stun easy, stuff like that. But that is 4 points. Half of your ascendancy has been spent on that.
Right.
So there's another one that gives you life recovery based on how low your life is. So the lower you get, the more life recovery over time you actually get, which is kind of fun.
Okay. How do we feel about the violent headhunter? Stabbing the corpses, ripping them
Yeah,
out.
the headhunter thing is kind of interesting. In a way, it kind of reminds me of the anvil thing, but it's a bit less ridiculous, right? Because it doesn't take that long to actually do.
Mm-hmm.
I actually find that the first node on that branch, the one that consumes rare monster modifiers, is better than the second node on that branch is really weak, in my opinion. It's weak.
So confusing. The only reason I can think that they added that was that so you can pre-buff before a boss.
Yeah,
but other than that, it's just like you would never take it.
Like, there's so many monster modifiers as well. Like the chance that you actually get a good one for your build is just not, and you only get one, right? And it lasts like 20 seconds or something like that. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of that second node. Let me. People are asking what node. Let me bring it up.
You sacrifice 25% of your max life to grant a random rare monster mod on yourself. Is that the one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as the Whispers demand it is, Ritual of Sacrifice can be used on yourself. So yeah, and you get, but you can only have a maximum of 1 monster modifier by doing it that way. And the interesting thing was in the reveal for the skill itself, for Ritual Sacrifice, Jonathan said that you get 1 monster modifier from a rare, but in the footage, as he's saying it, the player gets 4 monster modifiers from the rare. So if it's 1 monster modifier, it's bad. Because it's just going to take a random monster modifier from the rare, and that's just bad. If it's gaining all of the monster modifiers, I think it's actually quite serviceable. It's actually quite a good node.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah,
I like that.
The one thing about this ascendancy that's a little bit weird is just the travel nodes. So between the ring notables, you can equip an additional ring and the 25% increased ring effect. There's travel nodes, but they're all downsides, which I find a little bit strange, especially when one is so much obviously less downsidey than the others. Like 25% reduced spirit, 30% reduced mana, or minus 15 all res. I wonder which one I'm gonna click.
Yeah.
I mean, it's if
Yeah.
you have 3 rings, it's very easy. I was just
Res.
wondering. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
exactly.
cost being imposed. Like it's basically it allows them to have to have an upside on the next node that's bigger than they could otherwise have. And
Mm.
I figure the alternative is they could have said you get a third ring slot, but 60% effective explicit modifiers on that ring or something like that. And they've instead decided, no, we'll give you 100%, but we're going to allow you to choose your own drawback. And I think most people will take the mana nerf in a lot of situations, like
Mana?
resisted, not
Really?
trivial in this sort.
Well, the thing is, you've got 3 rings, and you can buff them by 25%. So even a single ring with, I don't know, a couple of resistances covers that. But I guess you're right. If you've got, you could also have just one ring with a nice chunk of mana. So there is flexibility there. The one that really stands out that is the spirit. I can't imagine wanting to take that unless maybe you just have too much spirit and you don't have enough gem slots to put stuff in, and you go, you know what? Actually, that's free. So
Yeah, I think it's
I could
fair.
see that. If it was a flat spirit reduction, I could maybe see that. But it being percentage means that
Percentage.
like it's just, even if you invest into spirit, like you make the downside worse for yourself. It's like that's just
a little bit strange. I mean, one of the other downsides I think is a good example of a downside on the Lich is that on Crystalline Phylactery, the one where you can sock it in an additional jewel, it has 50% more mana cost if you have no energy shields. I mean, that on the surface looks bad, but that's the kind of downside that you can go, wait, this could actually be really good if I do this and this and this and this, with Archmage or something like that. So yeah, you know what we really need for this podcast is we need like a middle tile where we can show images as we talk about it.
That's a
Yes.
good
The
idea.
future ones.
I like
I'll
it.
actually just write that down.
I think that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
I have
So
a question with that actually, Lolcohol.
Mhm.
Would you read that as affecting a skill that is, if you're using Burden of Truth, which you probably don't want on a Lich in general, but like, do you think would that like modify, because it modifies the mana cost and the mana gets converted to life? I don't actually know what the order of operations would be there, whether that would modify the mana cost. So if the skill cost 100 mana without Burden of Truth equipped and without a jewel in your phylactery, it'd be 150 with a jewel in your phylactery if you're at 0 ES. But then does that mean that it ends up being 150 life or 100 life at that point?
my goodness. I don't wait, Burden of Truth? Is that belts in PoE too?
That's but is that the name of it's the stuff from the uncommon stuff that drops from ritual from King in the Mist.
Oh, that's it is burden, but I don't think it's truth.
Burden of Shadows. Is it?
Burden of Shadows. That's it.
Yeah.
There you
Let
go.
me just catch
Okay.
up.
Sorry, everyone. It is 20 to 8 in the morning here, and I'm not a morning person.
I see. Okay, so Burden of Shadows. Skills mana cost converted to life costs. Skills gain 1% of damage as chaos damage per 3 life cost. So what you're asking is, in this case, would the plus 50% increased mana cost, if you have no energy shield, then make it so that your life costs are 50% increased, meaning you're getting that much more damage from this stuff? That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, though, right?
Yeah.
You see this downside, and immediately your brain goes, "Oh wait, what about that and that and that?" And then you build around it. Okay, now I need to figure out how do I make sure I never have any energy shields, so I'm getting the max benefit out of it. I love those kinds of downsides. Versus, I do find the little just like 30% less mana not that interesting, really. It just kind of feels like, I don't know, just make the good thing slightly less good. Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem
That
with the
sounds-
burden stuff is it doesn't have unconditional gem levels on it, which is the most important stat in the game. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be enough, but it's still something to at least think of.
It's a downside that you see, and it gets the juices flowing versus just, oh, I need to get an extra resistance on my ring.
I have to ask, guys, with that node on this ascendancy, do you guys think Ingenuity is getting gutted, or do you just think it's going to be a little bit more rare?
Yeah.
You think?
It's got to get gutted. It's like
I
Can I
think
get
it's
gutted?
dead.
it's a slot killer. It basically
Mm.
says you cannot play any belt. Like rare belts are unplayable. Unique belts not named Ingenuity or unplayable. We're talking at endgame here. We're not talking
Yeah.
about earlier. And on top of that, rings that have non-scalable effects or effects that aren't usefully scaled, like Original Sin's conversion. It's no use to scaling it, even though it technically can be. These are unplayable as well.
Yeah. Do you think
Yeah,
they're just
it's-
going to like adjust the stats, or do you think they're going to completely change it? Like it's just a failed experiment.
I think it'll be reworked.
Reworked?
I think
so?
that with this ascendancy node coming in, they probably don't want that modifier on the belt anymore.
If you dropped
I
it
don't know,
to
I think it's-
50%,
50 is way
still be
too much.
really-
That's a
it'd still be
lot, though.
Way, way too much.
Yeah. Sirgog?
Three rings at 50% magnitude from a belt slot, no shot.
Yeah, okay. Right.
With the
Krangle
extra
Divining is
25%,
one of the
right?
things that
Too?
pushes it. Krangle Divining is one of the things that pushes it a long way further as well. Like, okay, granted, this is out of the question for most people. You have to be very rich to be able to do this. But to pick up one that's pushed beyond 80%, it can roll up to 98% with a miracle Krangle Divine. Granted, that is an actual miracle to hit that, but they will exist across a league. But something that's like 90% is something that any rich player can acquire in the current game. And so that's one of those spots. It's one of the few spots where that Varlord mechanic is quite dangerous for game balance, more so than really anything else.
I saw someone in the chat said it will just give increased charm effect now. Ooh. Oh, yeah.
I mean, another thing they could always do instead of just not destroying the item. I mean,
Yeah.
even if it was at like 40%, it's still really good. But
Good.
introduce alternatives, and I assume that is probably what they will do. Of course, you can't. The interaction with Ingenuity and that ascendancy in particular, is that too much power if you set it like 40% or make it like 30 to 40% as a roll?
That would be
'Cause-
fine. I think it's fine if it's a slot
Yeah.
killer for one ascendancy.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure that it would actually be a slot killer at 30 to 40, but I think it's a problem when it's a slot killer for everything. For instance, in Path of Exile 1, I don't think it's a problem that the Trickster has just certain rare necrotic armors are a slot killer on that ascendancy there, because those rare necrotic armors specifically are not slot killers if you're playing something else.
So the reason why I don't think it'll exist like it does now, even like I just don't think it will be nerfed. I think it'll be reworked, is because that ascendancy basically changes the entire dynamic of that item. It's like now when they balancing that item and balancing that modifier, they have to consider that one ascendancy has 3 rings and every other ascendancy has 2, and that's just really, really awkward to balance. And I also think they want that second node afterwards to be something that's like, you know, I'm a ritualist, I've got this, you know, this is big, right? And if I'm wearing a belt and everyone's wearing a belt that's like 40 or 50% of the same stat, yes, granted it does work for amulet as well, which is quite important. But I just don't think. I think that we'll see a lot of that actually in the patch. I think there'll be a lot of things that will be not necessarily nerfed, but reworked into something else, because there are just problematic things in the game that they probably didn't really realize were going to be problematic until players have just broken everything, you know. So
Yeah. Now,
Can I say one of the consequences, though, if they seriously change Ingenuity, the Divine Orb demand is going to crater, because the primary sink of Divine Orbs, the reason that they were, you know, that they were always worth 50 chaos throughout the whole league, whatever that was in Exalts at the time, rather than being only 20 or 30, the primary reason was the existence of Ingenuity. The best belt in the game, on average, took 41 to perfect and took 8 to get to a status in which was fantastic. This is going to be a very substantial economic change if they touch Ingenuity in any big way.
yeah.
well, here's my.
They are adding a bunch of new unique items, though, to be fair, and I think that a lot of the strong uniques will probably have. I think they'll want to keep some of the top end of those. They'll bring it down a bit, obviously, but they want to keep some of the top end whilst maybe opening up the range on some of those things. Like, for example, I could see Hand of Wisdom in action having a big range on the added damage, so you need to get like a really good divine or something like that. But yeah, that's just an example of something that I could see them doing, because, like Sirgog said there, if those things don't exist, then it's a huge knock-on effect for the rest of the economy, which is a not good one for most people, because the economy just runs away from people very, very quickly if that's the case. So yeah, that's a good point.
Since we're talking
just
about
seeing what would
uniques,
replace the divine if they didn't. You have a couple of high-end crafting consumables that you have the Omen of Whittling, you have the Omen of Sinistral Annulment, the Omen of Dextral Annulment. All of them are being made more common by a factor of 2.5 in this. I feel like if they don't add in a new divine sync or modify an existing one, then those 3 could become the replacement high-end trade.
I could see that. Yeah, I could see that for sure. And also, I think the demand for those omens is going to be higher this time in this league as well, because they also have a bunch of other new interacting things going on, right? Fracturing orbs and the like. So it does look like they've put quite a bit of work into crafting for this update, which is something that's very welcome. The crafting was just basically non-existent unless you were really rich. So that's one of the really big changes in this patch, I think, is just having that kind of entry-level crafting with the essences that is more accessible, greater essences and things like that, and then having that high-end crafting also be something that people can reach without being ridiculously rich, which is, what you had to be before.
Okay, we have to talk about recombination. I want to talk about recombination now. What do you guys think about not what they presented, because that's not how it actually works? Did everybody watch the Q&A? So they corrected themselves? Who wants to talk about this? Lolcohol, you seem like you really want to explain how it works.
I've been saying for a while that I think Recombinators fit perfectly into Path of Exile 2. Especially with this idea of them wanting to have ground loot matter more, whether or not you disagree with that idea, but it fits in so well, and with the limited pool of modifiers, it makes sense. It really does. The funny thing, I don't actually like Recombinators in Path of Exile 1. They are too strong. Very often is like the best way to do stuff, and it is so tedious to do it. But with this, I actually think in SSF environments, in trade environments, it not only creates an opportunity to craft upgrades, it is a very, very clear sink for items. Just people are going to be deleting items left and right rather than just flooding the economy. People are going to be buying things and picking things up from the trade site to use with them and deleting them. So for people who don't know, the way that they said they wanted to work now is instead of having 2 items and then they get pushed together and you get a random-ish outcome. Now you can instead say, I want this mod from this one and this mod from this one, and it gives you a percentage chance of success, and you can select more than one mod on each one, and your chance of success goes down. And if you fail, both items are destroyed. So there's a very obvious sync. So recombinators, I think, are good.
It's pretty crazy.
Question?
Yeah. It's very basic too. You brought up that great point.
Exactly.
Like, it just makes sense, right?
It makes sense. Anyone can understand it. It's just like, oh, I want that and that. Let's see. And then hopefully it has a very obvious thing, 35% chance of success, or like at least low odds of success. And then you push it, and it's pretty foolproof, I would expect. And it's also really good for. I mean, have you seen the Recombinator posts on Reddit where it's, I've gone on about this on stream so many times with like 1p plus 2s plus 2p plus 1s plus 1e, and then you put that with 2p plus 1s plus 3p, and you're just like, dude, it's like an algorithm of how to craft. Hopefully we don't get that.
And you're not even going into the Markov chain optimization there.
Please no.
I know that's not a joke, but it sounds like a joke.
Oh,
I think.
God.
But is it worse than Necropolis?
Oh, no.
Necropolis that's interesting, because Necropolis was like it always felt like it was have Reddit design a league for Path of Exile 1. It's
Yeah.
like, let's have super
It is
deterministic
literally that.
crafting with a small amount of risk reward element in it. But the key thing I think that made Necropolis fail was that you couldn't fail upwards. If
Yeah.
you were trying to make a particular item, you couldn't go, oh, I accidentally made something that was 10% better than I thought. You either failed downwards or you hit what you were going for. And even though the chances of hitting what you're going for were good, the times that you failed downwards were really painful. And the times that you hit what you were going for, you got something that might have been 500 divines in a previous league, but it was just sort of break even because in Necropolis it wasn't anything special.
Yeah,
And
that makes total sense. And PoE too. Just gonna try to get away from Necropolis. With the new essences, I think we should talk about those. I think you can fail upwards with those quite a bit as long as they're in some way common. The one that they showed off where you can use a Val Orb and secure 2 enchantments on the item, that's ultimate Gamba. I mean, that's almost, it's not like the Locus of Corruption in PoE 1, but it almost exudes that feeling of, oh my god, I could hit, like percent increased attributes or something on this item right here. This is so cool. I don't know if that's an outcome in PoE 2.
It is belt only, remember?
Say again?
And so that one is belt only. And keep in mind that belt only means completely unusable as long as Ingenuity doesn't get nerfed. But again, assuming Ingenuity gets nerfed, then yeah, you might see someone actually equipping a rare belt for once.
You're too right.
I hope they add more interesting things. Like, belts they're just so bad. I don't know how they...
I would like to think that they would add they would add more than just having one modifier just for belts, right? For the Essence of Insanity. I know that's all we saw.
No, yeah. I'm just talking about generally belts.
Yeah.
Their mod pool and stuff is just terrible. Like they're so boring, man. They're insanely boring. We just need some more things going on with belts and probably some more interesting, unique belts as well.
We might get there. I mean, the big patch notes are coming.
Get them, yeah.
I think with all of the crafting changes, so I am actually I'm excited for it. I feel like it's really a step in the right direction, and it illustrates that they are willing to do more deterministic forms of crafting.
Yeah.
Semi-deterministic, but with an element of gambling, which I think is perfect, where there's a chance of failure, there's a chance of success, getting lucky. That's what makes crafting very enjoyable, not only to do, but also to watch. But the most important thing, and you touched on this, is how available are these things going to be? Because before PoE 2 came out, a lot of people, including me, put out videos that were like, the crafting system looks so good. It looks amazing. And then I think the reason that it didn't feel as good as expected was just the availability of these items. We didn't know how common omens would be. They turned out to be extremely rare. So, and same with essences and greater essences. So hopefully, fracturing orbs, omens, and what else do we have? Like the new base types and essences. If they are all common enough, it'll work together. It'll work together quite nicely. Yeah. So
I think the new essences are going to be pretty rare. They're basically a corruption outcome of greater essences. So they're going to be quite rare. But the thing is that, like, as long as you're playing in Trade League, it wasn't hard to source greater essences in 010 either. I know that, like, I had a whole bunch. I actually had traded a bunch of essences for an article that I wrote for Mobalytics on currency flipping. I was doing a bunch of experimenting there and found that the greater essences of the body, which were a bit off meta, it took me months to sell a listing that I put up for them at 41 to the divine. Like, I sold 2 of them, and then the third one just didn't sell, and it literally took a month, but I was off playing PoE 1 for most of that time, so it didn't actually bother me. And you think, like, you get 41 of a greater essence for a divine when they were rarer. Well, they're just going to be, they're going to be less than a chaos each for the greater essences, except maybe for the top ones. Like, if it's a similar meta to 010, that'd be the lightning essence.
I think there would be a greater sync for them if there was some possible way of backtracking rarity. I still wonder.
Well, that's
it would be. You don't think so? I was just wondering if perhaps something like using an annul on an item, if it had fewer than 3 modifiers, it went back to magic. That could be one way they could do it, because then immediately you get that sync of, get your first mod essence, and then greater essence. If you fail, a null goes back to magic. You're gonna try again. But I think perhaps they weren't used as much because I don't know, when are you using greater essences?
Like
Do you
pretty
just
much everyone that I know that wound up with 3 or more mirrors got there primarily through trading for essences, trading for bases, and using both normal and greater essences to do for-profit crafting. You're throwing 40 divines on average in order to hit one wand, and then you turn around and you sell it for 60.
Yeah,
And
yeah, for sure. I mean, the point more is the crafting tools are there if you are super wealthy and can afford to do those. But I'm thinking more in the context of just like, do normal people use greater essences that much? Like, did you guys who here use greater
I
essences?
I guess I'm classified as I didn't make nearly as much currency. That was my end of league gamble project. I had spent the entire time collecting a whole bunch of quarterstaff bases, and then I bought a bunch of greater essences to try to get Fizmods. It's the only time I really interacted with them in any great, amount. Beforehand, it was like one off, like trying to upgrade an item that had 2 good mods on it, but not in any great amount.
Yeah, I
It was
think
fine.
Yeah, I
only
played
used
SSF for
three or
most of the
four.
time, so
You're
I
not
just
gonna
used
find them.
whatever I had, and nothing really came of it because you
Yeah.
just don't really get them at all in SSF. It's just not really a thing.
Yeah.
Were way too rare. Like, I'm not sure why they made greater essences as rare as they were, but I'm hoping they're going to be a bit more common now.
It definitely looks like it, especially because there are some nodes on the Atlas passive tree that actually give a pretty decent chance for like regular essences to turn into greater too, and that wasn't available before. So yeah. I'm sorry guys, I interrupted your thoughts on the recombinators. Dream, Sirgog, I think Lolcohol brought up a great point that they're adding determinism to the game pretty firmly with this new recombination system, especially. Being able to pick modifiers, even if there's a chance that the items are going to get destroyed, is kind of crazy. What do you guys think about them adding that level of deterministic crafting to the game?
I think it's going to be, like, in a lot of ways, it's just an alternative to the existing crafting methods that exist that will just use different reagents. Like, currently, if you want to create a +7 lightning skills spell staff with tier 1 lightning damage on it, you're looking at, like, leave aside whether you want a staff or a wand, you probably want a wand, but if you wanted to make that specific one for a project, it's the way that you do it is you throw maybe 500 essences and 25 greater essences, maybe a bit more than that, at staff bases, at a lot of staff bases. You're going to need hundreds of them. And eventually you'll end up getting what you're looking for. At least you'll have a chance every time. Well, this is just a different way to shoot for those same goals, but to do it with different reagents. And also it's a way to potentially recycle some of your failed attempts from the crafting process. I think that's the main thing, is that you succeed at the first essence, you fail at the greater essence. Well, now what you've got is a one perfect mod reagent that you can then use in recombination. This is going to increase the amount of good items going around, but it's also going to widen the gulf between people that understand crafting and people that don't. So if you don't feel like you understand crafting, you are going to need to learn now. Whereas in the past, it was fine to just outsource that to someone else. There'll be a bigger gulf involved. It's going to be more important to learn that.
That's sensible. How about from an SSF perspective, Dreamcore? How do you feel about it?
I think it's a good addition. Obviously, you're going to play Expedition, which is no different than in PoE 1, where you play Expedition or whatever to start off the league, so that you can get early gear, but or Harvest or whatever you fancy really. But for recombinators in PoE 2, I think that if they have the numbers right on the chances, I think they said, did I hear Jonathan say 35% chance to hit 2 modifiers? So you pick one from each item, and it's a 35% chance to hit them both on that base. That's quite good odds, honestly.
It is.
Because right now in PoE 2, we have this like going from one mod to two is usually like using greater essence and failing almost every time, right? I mean, in my experience, it was failing every time. I should think for most people, it is that way, you know, because the odds are just stacked against you. So using a recombinator and having that success 1 in 3 times is actually pretty good to get to 2 mods. So that's definitely a good addition. And I think on average now with that change, people are going to have probably plus 1 to 2 affixes on each gear piece, sort of towards that late maps or wherever they are. And that is quite a big power boost overall, across the board, which is for most of those players, it obviously depends on how much money you had in the league, because some people were able to just afford very good gear early on. But for most people, I expect that's going to offset somewhat the massive nerf apocalypse which is coming, and there is going to be a huge nerf apocalypse that I think skills are just going to get wiped out for the most part, a lot of the well-performing skills. But hopefully you will have on average a little bit better gear than going into late maps.
Yeah, I'm excited as someone who didn't trade a ton. Right? Just even though I was playing Trade League, just having more tools and more incentive to like run Expedition. Man, just praying for those logbooks. That was basically it. I didn't use the vendors at all, but Recombinators, I'm going in 100%. So it's going to be super fun. Also curious, staying on the topic of items, they're adding 100 plus new uniques to the game. Okay. And they specifically said in the Q&A and in a few other interviews that they are focusing on making these endgame viable. So uniques you're actually going to use in the endgame, you're going to find. It's not just going to be retired, or it's just not going to hit the mark. And they teased quite a few. Of those that they teased, did any pique your interest? And do you guys think they're going to end up achieving this with these new items that they're introducing?
I'm sure some of them will be good. Yeah, the coming calamity does look good, yeah. But we don't know what's happening to Herald skills, right? I think if a body armor is giving you all 3 Heralds for free, the Herald skills are probably not going to be that good anymore, is my take from that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also gives you a decent chunk of life and all res, and enemies in your presence have no elemental resistance.
Yeah, that thing's kind of crazy, yeah.
That's nuts.
Here's a question, right? Would you use that if the Heralds are gutted to the point that they are just 3% more damage and that's all they achieve? Like, that's more than I think they'll be gutted. But if they were made that bad, I feel like you would still want to use it just for the original sin level. Like, when I'm saying OSIN, I'm talking Path of Exile 1 OSIN, suppression of all resistances. Or you could pitch that as 75% penetration of all elemental resistances. Or infinite penetration for that matter, because the way penetration works in PoE 2.
Yeah.
Basically, you've got unlimited pen on elements, and you've got a Goldrum, like better than Goldrum level resistances as well, which is a stat you've got to get somewhere. It's not exciting, but you've got to get it. Like the item is just.
It is crazy. A good item. It is. But that's those other modifiers on there make me think, like, what have they done to Heralds? Like, if they're giving you all 3 Heralds, like, he said that, right? Without reservation.
He said without spirit costs. I'm just not sure if that's
so strong.
Isn't that kind of weird because it's not actually on the, like, I know there's some items in PoE 1 that have hidden modifiers that are not actually explicitly stated. They do something that's not, I guess that's what's going on there. But I feel like it should say it on there, right? Like, maybe the reason why they did that is so that you can't, because if it said Heralds have no reservation, you could then socket your own Heralds, maybe they were higher level or whatever. Because I assume that body armor is going to drop, and it's going to have specific level Heralds already on there, and that's just the ones you get, right? So
yeah.
The Heralds are going to be dependent upon the item level of the item.
Yeah,
the one that they show there is item level 84. And I think the vast majority of these that exist will be item level 83, 82, 81, down to 78, whatever the minimum drop level of it is. And they'll be level 18 Heralds. How much do Heralds scale with gem level again, though? Assuming they stay the same as they are now. I think it's, like, modest. It's not much, right?
Yeah, so I don't think it was too much, yeah. I think from, like, level 1 to 20, they, like, doubled in damage or something like that overall. Something like that, or it might have been like 120%.
I didn't have level 19 spirit gems
Explosion
on my
damage.
character. Still felt strong.
Is there any scaling? I'm looking at it in POB. It looks
like
just like
attack-
the explosion radius is being scaled. Wait. Okay, no, this is bugged. Never mind.
Right.
I'll look at it on PWD.
The
or
only
something.
announced nerf, right, is that they no longer chain off each other. Is that the only thing that we've been hinted at for heralds? Nothing else?
Yeah.
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 There's also
which
Herald
is-
of Blood coming. Oh my god. Isn't that cool?
Where
Big
did that
bloody
come from?
pops.
Pretty cool.
Excited for that.
I heard. Yeah, well, I heard about it, but I didn't see it.
Oh
Where
yeah,
was it?
it's
Was it a leak?
It does scale a bit more in damage. So it goes from 70% to 286% at level 20. That's 1 to 20.
oh,
And what's the
on-
18 to
on-
19 and 19 to 20 delta?
getting
it
into the
is-
technicalities here.
19 to 20 is 265 to 286. And 18 to 19 is 247 to 265.
So let's call it 7% more per gem level.
Yeah.
So you're going to be fine if you get one of the coming calamity that is item level 78 to 83. It's going to be 7% weaker performance than one that's I-84, but I-84 is very rare.
Yeah.
Why? Are there any level 20 skills on items? I'm just wondering, is that level 19
Fire
thing
I-90.
some... Okay, right. So it could exist. I was just wondering, maybe it's some subtle hint that level 20 gems get some bonus, like Awakened Gems level 5, but
Ah.
probably not.
Doesn't Mjolnir get lightning spell level 22 on hit?
No, it's 18.
It's
on
18.
The one that's
Oh,
fixed.
dang.
But
It's close.
Again, that'll be eye dependent. That would be a 78 to 83.
Also, what does that mean? Does that mean we get to choose a lightning spell to socket, or is it like a skill called lightning spell? Because I was like, oh, do we get to choose like ball lightning versus spark, or is there a skill
any
called
lightning spell goes in
Any
there, and
lightning
then
spell.
it's triggered when you. Yeah, I think it will be an energy mechanic similar to the other triggers.
Oh,
So you
that's
just
cool.
place a lightning spell in there. Whenever you hit with the weapon, it builds up energy, and then it will go over a threshold.
I like it. Thought it might be like
Yeah.
filler text. It was like, oh, the name was supposed to go here. It's a lightning spell, but we haven't decided yet. But that sounds cool. I like that. Exciting stuff. I'm really hoping that there are a few weapons, kind of like Void Forge and Starforge and PoE 1, that allow you to build an entire character around them. We saw a lot of wicked weapon art. I mean, the drip on the Rogue Exiles is insane. I thought they looked so cool. I really hope some of those weapons.
I think I saw Nebulok in the.
Oh, you
yeah,
did?
like,
Yeah.
icons. I'm sure there was
Yeah.
Nebulok there. It looked just like Nebulok art from PoE 1. So I think that's probably Nebulok. Yeah.
So
How does
Synthesis is
that work
back.
thematically in a game where like the Elder has been
Bro,
excised 20
I
years
guess it's a remnant, right? Is it like it's like a remnant of the past? Like someone's had it stashed away somewhere.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I like it.
Yeah.
Did you guys notice any others in the like I don't know, they had
I don't
the
think I
scroll
recognize
and-
any others from the
Drift
art.
was present.
I saw Red
really?
Blade Banner too.
Yeah, Red Blade Banner,
I saw that one.
Rearguard was there. I remember we stopped and looked at them, and there were quite a few
Yep.
that were familiar. But does it really mean anything? Are there, from what we've seen, a lot of the items
Yeah,
don't
exactly.
necessarily
I know what you're gonna say,
carry
dude.
over? It's like Devouring Diadem.
Yeah, a
Isn't
lot
the
of them
same
were just
thing,
so
right?
much worse. Like, and
Somebody
many
was
of them
talking about
were
Frost
just
Breath.
turned into like
Frost Breath, the
Yeah, like-
mace. Was it you, Dreamcore?
it was me. Yeah.
It was in your. I was like, oh, you're
Like
so
that's
right. That
like
was
a
my
really
first
cool
build.
item in PoE 1, and then in PoE 2 it's just like this extremely low level, just kind of trash mace that you just outscale very quickly.
Yeah, that was my first build in PoE 1. It was a double Frost Breath Juggernaut Ice Crash, and it was so shit. I got caught on Drox. I could not kill Drox at level 90. It was so sad. I literally remember trying to kill him for 10 minutes straight, and I couldn't get through his barrier. So I restarted Toxic Rain and cleared the entire game with ease. Almost did it though. Yeah, dang. I'll
It's
make it work in
interesting,
PoE 2.
though, that like some of the items that were underwhelming in PoE 2 but were amazing in PoE 1, there are, of course, well, at least there's two very notable exceptions to that. Two certain jewelry pieces that in Path of Exile 1, one of them is a tier 2 rarity middling popular unique, and the other one I think is a tier 4 rarity completely forgotten unique. And of course, we're talking Astromantis and Dream Fragments here, two of the most expensive items in the game in 010. And so, yeah, like the different contexts can change what's good and what isn't. But I do think that PoE 1 has some much more thought out uniques.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Hopefully
really
we see
hoping
more.
for with these new uniques is that they have more consideration for the state of the current game. I guess is the best way I could put it, because
Yeah.
the original uniques that were in the game from launch, most of them were designed for campaign leveling. Is like the best thing that I can think of. That's just kind of what they feel like. They're like power spiky in the campaign, and then at some point you just drop them, and then obviously you just have the ridiculous busted items at the end game that everybody's using because they're just, as Sirgog said, with the Ingenuity, you just can't use anything else really because it's just that good.
Yeah.
So
now
Yeah.
we're getting 100 new uniques, but we're also getting over 100 new support gems added to the game, which quite a few people are excited about. I mean, this could, depending on the balance overhaul and everything, this could be one of the most impactful things happening. Giving people more options, more viable options with all the new skills, all the existing skills. We saw a couple of the support gems, but what do you guys think about their focus on just getting I'm assuming as many supports into the game as possible with every patch? Because it sounded like they kind of said, yeah, next patch we're aiming for another huge batch and another huge. They just want to keep going with this. It excites me. Lolcohol, what do you think about the options that might be presented?
Very, very happy with it. One of the things that I was never really worried about it because it's just the first release, but the feeling like the options for a lot of build things were quite limited, and often you would end up just making a very similar build to someone else because that there wasn't enough available to currently to really experiment and do something completely different. But this is the start of hopefully now really being able to have those similar but different builds. If we get enough supports, enough uniques, enough different scaling on the tree, that's what's going to get it to that Path of Exile feel where you can have poison lightning strike or hit based lightning strike or I don't know. Okay, that's probably all. I don't know. There's probably other kinds like that I'm not thinking of. But yeah, so I'm really, really happy with this, especially since last week I felt like there were a lot of times where I just thought, man, you can only put one gem of each type in, one support gem, and you would have a sixth link, and sometimes you think like, man, what's the next sixth link gonna be? And you have to kind of like scroll down and search. And then with your other supports, you've got 6 links on everything if you want, but there's not really enough. So I'm very, very, very excited for all of these. And there's a couple I know Sirgog pointed out.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about cadence? Cadence support?
Yeah, well, can I just quickly say something about general first? I think one of the best things about them having 100 supports is that they can put out some that are extremely, extremely niche. Things that are trash tier on 99% of builds. You can do that because there's not such a shortage of support gems. There's that helmet from the Arbiter 2 Plus, I think. I think it's Arbiter 2, Arbiter 3, and Arbiter 4 that exists. I can't remember its name, but it allows you to use 2 of the same support gem. That is something that was used a lot in 010. I think that'll be used a lot less in 020 because there'll be more supports, and you can go, okay, well, I'm going to use something on this one. I'm going to use a different one here. One of them is better, but they both do sort of the same thing, and I'm not going to go through the opportunity cost of tying up my helmet slot with this helmet for it. But yeah, Cadence, I think, is a pure power support. I did a write-up for Mobalytics recently, and I also put a video out on it. I think it's the best support gem in the game. Not for every build. It's definitely not for every build. But if your attack speed is 0.899 to 0.950 seconds without Cadence, Cadence is 60% more damage once you get rolling. It has its drawbacks. It doesn't do that until you start rolling. But if you're in a position where you can stand still, it's just tremendous amount of damage. It's a fantastic support gem. And it can also be used, like if you're really willing to go to the next level with it and you're willing to endure playing with a metronome ticking near you, then you can make even more precise optimizations as well, but I don't think most people will do that. That's going to be Jungroan and Ben.
That's Chung Roan, yeah.
Jungroan has used a metronome before, right?
Yeah, I actually remember watching his stream when he was using one. He was playing what's that fire spell where you like you build up projectiles around you and then they all shoot out together at once.
Isn't it blazing something? Or no?
It could be. So I can't remember what it is.
Ember Fusillade.
Ember Fusillade. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I remember that.
He was literally playing. He was doing exactly that, just the perfect timing, so that he could always keep the projectiles up because of the bug with the support gem that keeps spawning too many projectiles, basically. But that bug will probably be gone with this patch. So yeah, in terms of the support gems, just getting back to topic there.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on what Sirgog was talking about there, about the niche supports, because they actually talked about that before PoE2's launch. They talked about how they kind of didn't feel like it was a waste of time to add all of these niche supports, because there is going to be a lot of cases where there's going to be like a support gem and it may only work on 2 skills out of like hundreds of skills in the game, right? But they still want to add it to the game because it's supporting an important niche playstyle, right? It's there. It's like a playstyle that's just... It's got to exist in the game because they want to have all of those options for players. So I think one thing that I could suggest there is like the Warcry build with where you build up a bunch of strength and you dealing damage with Corrupting Cry. Right now it has like 2 damage supports. That's all it has. There isn't any other supports in the game that can go on there. Everything else is utility based, like lower cost or area of effect or something like that. So that's just an example there of something that's lacking support options. And it's really limiting like the amount of damage that the build can do. So yeah, I think it's a really good thing that they add a bunch of these support gems, and there's going to be some gems in there like the one that Sirgog was talking about, and there's going to be a bunch of support gems where you're like, what is that? Like, I'm never going to use that. And then one day you're going to be like, wow, that support gem is actually going to be useful in this build because I can actually sock it in and it does something.
Almost like unique items with the number of support gems that are going to be in the game at this point. What is it, 250 plus now?
Yeah.
And they'll always be there. Maybe I'm crazy, guys, but when Jonathan was scrolling through the support gem screen, I was just thinking, I feel like there needs to be some extra sorting options kind of with gems.
Yeah.
There's so many. Oh my, I know you can search for like by tag, but I'm almost wondering if they should add in the ability to have tabs with all the different tags and you can go through those. I don't know, because there's a lot. That's a crap load.
Yeah.
I mean,
the UI needs a lot of
There's
work.
a lot going on.
It's pretty bad, yeah.
I also think
but
that they could consider going with more than 3 tiers of them. Like this, as a way of staggering the rate at which you get access to new options. Because like if you look in Path of Exile 1, you get new support gems at, I think it's character levels 4, 8, 12, 31, 38, 44, or something like that. It's I may not be exactly right on those numbers, but there's about 6 different points at which you get new support gems. And it means that like if you're someone that isn't following a build guide, then you can make a choice between a non-overwhelming number of choices, and then you can make another choice later. I feel like they should probably have, instead of 3 tiers, maybe have 6 or 7, introduce them a few at a time, and you don't even necessarily need to delay getting any of them. You can have it so that you still get them at the same levels you get them now, or a bit earlier, but you just have a few more options.
That's a sensible approach as well.
Yeah, I could see them doing that.
I can't wait to use Syzygy support. Just so I can say Syzygy support. I can't even talk at all the streams.
What does it do again? Name. It's such a cool name.
Syzygy. Yeah.
I can't remember what they showed for that one.
Well,
the name really does stand out.
There was, to be honest with you, there was so much stuff in that reveal that like half of it is just like I'm gonna have to rewatch it like a couple of times.
There were
I've been so busy after the reveal that it's just like catching up on all the stuff is just crazy.
It's a lot. There were a lot of slam supports being added. That I noticed that. I feel like maybe the majority there were like Syzygy. That was a support for slams. It had freaking 10 lines on it, so I don't remember exactly what it did. But it seems like they're trying to add some more support to those slam skills that were so pesky for that entire first cycle going on there. I'm really curious, guys. Just for a second, since we're talking about support gems and like balance, okay? yes, there is balance happening. Like I think Dreamcore, you said they talked about balance 3.5 hours into the reveal, and I think Mark Roberts literally said, "quote Forget everything you know about PoE 2." End quote.
Yeah, good.
I
Good.
mean, dude, that's crazy. I feel that's for us PoE 1 players. Maybe it's more important to us than everyone else who is newly introduced. That's like I think like a main feature. They always
But
talk
I
about
think
balance. You know,
it's important to, like, even though you may not be excited about balance in the game,
Yeah.
that's an important aspect
It
of the
is.
game being good in leagues to come. Because there's going to come a time where you will just like be like, okay, I don't want to play this build for the 5th time in a row, right? Because it's just the best build.
Mhm.
And we have had something similar to that in PoE 1 for a while. I mean, now it's a bit different because we had the one big patch where melee suddenly got buffed to the moon. But for a long time, melee was crap, and there was a bunch of builds that just were sitting at the top for leagues and leagues and leagues. You could just log in and play the same build. So I think them balancing the game, and by the way, how on earth did they not put this in the main video? How was there not just some kind of dialogue from Jonathan or from Mark just saying, like, we're gonna balance we're gonna balance the game? Like that's all they had to say. Like, we're gonna balance the game. Some things are completely out of whack right now. Some stuff is terrible. We're going to balance the game. There's going to be a huge balance pass. You're going to get the patch notes next week, right? That should have been in the video rather than an hour and 10 minutes or whatever it was into the Ziggy D Q&A. It just suddenly come up. The topic came up out of nowhere, by the way. It wasn't really like a very specific question or something. They just kind of ended up on that. And it's a huge topic. Like, it's a giant topic. The balance of the game is massive. For a lot of people, like, if the game isn't balanced properly, they begin to not enjoy the game anymore. So, you can add as much new content as you want, and at some point, you're just playing the same build league on league, and people get bored with it. So I think them balancing the game is really important, and I'm just excited to see the patch notes. Like they said, like you said, it's going to be a different game, and I just want there to be. It's just going to be a nerf apocalypse. Like, just seriously, bring everything down. Get some of those underperforming things up a little bit, and then just hopefully we're at a better baseline at the beginning of patch 0.2.
I was listening to Connor a little bit to get my Twitch drop that night, and he said, I think they need to nerf everything by 90%. That's probably what they need to do.
Yeah.
Will they do that? Or are they going to go with 40, 50% to not scare people? Because we all know how.
I think the chat's bringing up some good points there, saying that they're scared. Like, they're scared of basically like scaring players off, pretty much. And I actually just think they just.
What do you think, Sirgog?
Inaction scares players off. Like, inaction. The reason that I have played less in January, February, March than I would have otherwise is because there were 3 egregious balance mistakes. I'm only talking Hand of Wisdom in action, Archmage, and Trample Toe, the Trample Toe Frostwall interaction. These are the 3 egregious mistakes. 89% of players on high-level characters, according to PoE2 Ninja, are scaling their damage using one of these 3 methods. Now, this means that any boss that they want to introduce to be something that can actually stick around for a little while, it needs to have its numbers balanced around these egregious outliers. And that means that they're going to be a complete and utter progression brick wall for anyone that's not playing one of these balance outliers. Mm-hmm. This is the consequence. This is the status of the game now. They should have fixed those 3 outliers. The 2 that they knew about at the time in December, they should have fixed in December. The one that came up later should have been fixed in January. If they'd done that, if Hand of Wisdom in action had been deleted, like nerfed so hard that people replaced it with Rare Gloves from Act 2, if they'd replaced Archmage, like if they just nuked it from orbit, and then later on you can buff them back to the point they're compelling to use, but that they don't dominate the meta. If they'd done that, I think the game would be in a much better place. This is what they were promising to do before the game started. And like it's just, people sort of drift away because it's like, I don't really feel like playing Hand of Wisdom in action builds. I don't feel like playing an Archmage build, and I have 0 interest in the Trample Toe stuff. So I'm not playing, I'm basically unable to compete economically with the people that do use those broken things.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, that was one of the things I was most excited about with PoE2 was pre-launch. They said they were going to be balancing the game regularly, and then, a couple of weeks in or a month in or whatever it was, they put the last patch out, and then we didn't have anything for 2 months. Just nothing, like no communication, nothing. The game was just stale. The same things are overperforming. And
Did they get
yeah,
asked about that during the Ziggy interview?
Not during the Ziggy interview, but
No, really?
there was a
Okay.
Q&A, but there was a Q&A with, I think, the press, and they were asked, and they're going to treat it like a full release game. Essentially what Jonathan said was, we thought we could do this because it's early access and people would give us that grace, but people aren't in their view. And they're not willing to meet. They didn't say this, but they're not willing to meet halfway and say, okay, we're going to give you like free respecs or 70% reduced free respecs, whatever. Like John Groan tweeted out, ascendancy respect should be a thing during early access, at least, right? So people can just test out, right? They're not going to do that. And
I wonder
instead, they're going to
why.
focus on the
Huge
big
mistake.
balance every 3 to 4
Yeah.
months.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense because
I don't know. I don't agree with it.
situation. It was so easy to avoid that. You just say we're doing a huge balance pass. Everyone gets a free respec. What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
What's the problem with that?
There is one issue with allowing ascendancy changes. I'm actually of the opinion that they should allow ascendancy changes, but not until the ascendancy you're respecing into has existed for at least 2 weeks. And that's because they need to get feedback on bad ascendancies. If they'd allowed ascendancy respecs on day 1, they would have no feedback on the Blood Mage. They would have no feedback on the Acolyte of Chayula at all. They'd have no data as to whether these are any good, because every single player that was playing them that was even remotely focused on optimizing would have respec'd into the other ascendancy on that class. Blood Mage actually ended up getting better later on.
Yeah.
Although that's mostly the trample toe shenanigans, but even the dead version of it is a solid enough build too. And that was something that was discovered late. I don't know that dead build would have been discovered if everyone that was playing the Blood Mage that was optimization focused had been allowed to respec into it was Infernalist, wasn't it? Not, I'm thinking Stormweaver. Infernalist was the alternative.
But my big fear for this patch and balance and 100+ new supports, 100 uniques, 5 new ascendancies, all this stuff coming to the game, these crazy essences, all the crafting options, I feel like the exact same thing is going to happen. And there's going to be a few outliers. Everybody's going to gravitate there, and then nothing's going to happen until August.
Yeah.
Right?
It is going to. That exact thing is inevitable. It's an inevitability that the game gets broken by... There's a lot of very smart people that play PoE. They come together and they break the game. It happens within a matter of days, right? Yeah. And that is exactly why they need to be balancing the game regularly. Like it
you want to start a petition?
Like Sirgog said there, that sort of not doing those things turned him away from playing the game, and it's going to turn a lot of other people away from playing the game as well. So you're not going to get that sort of longevity of people testing the game, testing lots of different ascendancies, lots of different builds, lots of different skills. And instead, what you're going to get is a huge group of players all converging to the same build, all converging to the same playstyle, and everyone just plays the same thing. They once again delete bosses, and you just end up with the same thing that you had in that patch. And I actually do think that we are going to get that pretty much as is again. Like it might not be as bad. Like players might not be doing quite as much damage at the top end, but I think bosses are going to be melted again. Like there's going to be cases where people were just instantly killing things, no animations, no skills being used. So yeah, that's why they need to balance the game. It's as simple as that. They even said this in the Q&A. They actually said that they cannot balance the game during early access. They know this, right? Yeah. They know that like no matter what they do, there's always going to be broken things. Right. So what they need to do is they need to say internally, okay, guys, we have like a metric that they don't give it out publicly, but they say anything above this kind of in this region, we're going to just get rid of it as like a hot fix. We're going to come in and balance it. And they need to sometimes they need to take the decision of, okay, we are going to offer respecs at a cheaper price during this period. Like that would be a good idea, I think, overall, because it's a good compromise. You can say to players, we'll lower respec costs during early access, and after early access, it's going back up again. As long as you communicate it properly, then that's fine. Like you can have it, you can even have it in game whilst you're respecking.
When
You
you
can have a
hover
little
over. Yeah.
red bit of text that says gold respecs are 50% off during early access. Like at least people would know. They can visibly see it.
Right. It is fascinating, and it all comes down to, it seems that so many people play the game and they don't want to disappoint all these people, and they want to treat it like a full game. I feel like a fully released game, right? And that essentially is going to extend the window of early access too, right? Because they're not going to be able to balance this stuff. And every single time they add a bunch of new stuff to the game, it's just all going to break. It's not like PoE 1 where they have generally good balance, and they're not adding, 100 new support gems and a brand new class archetype for the first time tested by a bunch of players, right? They don't usually need to do mid-league nerfs there. But this, I don't know. It's so fascinating.
Was there reasoning that they don't want to disappoint people? Because I have been getting that feeling a lot, where you're trying to not upset people. I found that is like terrible, man. In just with everything, if you try and make everyone happy, it's impossible, man. Someone's going to be upset. You're going to have the people that, on the one hand, Sirgog is describing, where you are disappointed there's no balance pass and you're getting bored. And if you do the balance pass, then you might disappoint people whose builds are getting nerfed. What I think would be ideal is to say what is best for the long-term outcome of the game, and do that. And then people just deal with it. And then possibly put some things in place to smooth it out a bit, like the cheaper respecs. I feel like there is a very it's like a strangely obvious middle ground, but whenever I feel like something is obvious, I feel like I'm maybe missing something. But in this case, I don't know what it is. Why?
I think you do touch on a proper point here. Like, they don't want to disappoint people, and they want to act on, or they are reacting to a lot of what people have displeasure with. Like this patch, right? I was expecting this patch to be something totally different. I was completely like hoodwinked watching it, right? I think some other people were as well. But it is, if you look back, it kind of makes sense, right? Like Mark said, we don't have a timeline really. We're going to react to people's feedback, and that's what we're going to focus on, right? And that is literally what this patch did. Full endgame focus, adding a bunch of new character options to the game with the support gems and unique items, the new character class, right? And that, what were people complaining about the most? Like, oh, wow, the campaign was great. Endgame, though, wow, ass. There's nothing to do, right? And they blasted it out of the park with that, right? I feel like it was just very reactionary. But with the character balance thing, I think it just goes back to, yes, it's in early access, and we can say, like, oh, when you hover over 50% off in early access for respec costs. But they don't see it as early access. They see it as a fully released game. I swear, that is the thing. That's how it's treated. PoE 2, Dawn of the Hunt. Mystery boxes come out next week, you guys. Mystery boxes in early access. We were talking about that before the stream. I don't know.
Is that actually a thing?
It was in the live stream. Am I crazy? I think Mark said our first mystery box will be in next weekend. Chat, correct me on that, but I am 95% sure he said that in the live stream. Maybe I'm crazy, but
that matches my recollection. But
yeah, he said there's no new supporter packs, but he was like, we're going to have our first brand new skill effects for PoE 2 and mystery boxes next weekend. There's just a clashing of ideologies, and I love the patch. I think it's going to be super fun, but there are some things here that, tweak me a little bit. Not to get negative or anything, but
no, that's fine.
I'm not
I feel the
surprised that they're trying to introduce, cash store purchases into Path of Exile 2. Honestly,
yeah.
I thought one of their highest priorities, and actually one of the metrics I'll be using to judge their progress towards 1.0.0 will be the percentage of the back catalog of Path of Exile 1 microtransactions that are ported over. I'm talking about the ones that can be sold still, because it doesn't really matter to them. Something like the what's the name of the Orion supporter pack from the year they introduced Cyrus. That doesn't matter because they can't sell it anymore. They've promised to bring it in, so they'll do it at some point, but that's not a super high priority for them. But the things they can still sell, like, let's just take the Sin and Innocence armor set. One of my personal favorites. It's quite expensive, so it's something that most people probably aren't interested in buying, but I do like the look of it. That's one that makes sense for them to consider a medium priority at least to get into Path of Exile 2, and because it's something that makes them money, and it's something that they'll only defer if doing so is really important. That's my thoughts on it. So I'm sort of thinking that we'll see a bunch of MTX brought in, and I'm just basically tracking how far off 1.0.0 is based on if they've done 30% of them. Well, they're probably 30% of the way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was also surprised that there wasn't as many cosmetics like on launch when they were probably at over 1 million players, right? That probably just means that they just weren't ready, right? And they are focusing on other things. Really interesting. All right, I'll move on from the doomerism talk, you guys. Let's talk about some. We haven't even touched on Endgame. Holy crap, Endgame, you guys! Wow, because everybody here, I mean, probably is going to play a decent chunk of that. It looks good. I want to start with towers, okay? Because everybody was like, towers suck, towers are ass, remove towers, they can't fix towers. I don't know. They actually look kind of cool now. You know, they have unique boss fights that actually. We've got Lightning Boy, Blackjaw, which is pretty cool. The Dueling Witches, right? And now we can influence like 34 maps at once. Hell yeah. What do you guys think about the tower changes? Lolcohol, what are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I think it's good. So I think they solved it in a really smart way where it wasn't towers inherently, they're not intrinsically a bad concept. The problem was just the frequency and the requirement to do them. But now you can run one, juice it with 3 tablets. It affects a ton of maps. It's got stuff in it. It now is actually a genuine point of interest. Yeah. So I think they nailed it. Obviously, we're gonna have to get a caveat for everything. We'll see when we get in game, but on paper, it looks really cool. I will be excited to see a tower now, rather than thinking, oh boy, I have to run 6 towers before I can play the game.
Oh god, no.
Yeah, that was making them like rarer and then cover a larger area is just a really good change. That's just a great change overall. And then obviously being able to use like multiple tablets on the same tower kind of fixes the problems that they discussed in that reveal video, where you kind of are taking away juice from the player by making that change, but then they're adding it back in by having multiple tablets on the same tower, which is, that's good change.
Yeah, I think that with towers, I think part of the reason people hate them so much is because before 0.11, there was only one tower layout, the Lost Towers, and that layout is absolutely god-awful terrible. And that was 100% of towers. Then that got improved to be only 20% of towers. And that was a significant improvement, but you still encounter it often enough that you get annoyed. Well, now you're going to be encountering the Lost Towers layout 6.67% as often as you did in 0.10. And so that's going to feel like it's just going to be a rare nuisance. It's not going to be something that's horrendously awful anymore. On top of that, the other layouts are all, they vary, but they're going to be okay. Towers are no longer going to feel like an empty map the way that they did in particularly 0.10, where you're just sort of running to the end of the Lost Towers, hoping to get to the end of it. They're going to feel like a real map now. And the one concern I have, though, is that it is still the case, from what I can see, that a large percentage of the loot that you get in your maps is going to be generated as a result of explicit modifiers on very well-rolled precursor tablets. I feel like those are overtuned, and that some of that loot should be removed from there and put into just other things, like potentially map modifiers.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Because you're always going to want to beeline to these towers every time, right? There's no reason you would never do that. You'd almost feel bad the more maps that you're doing before you get
exactly.
the tower.
The more maps you do in the radius.
Yeah.
The more maps you do in the radius, you're wasting potential juice there. Yeah. Well, if that amount of maps are being covered, by the tablets.
One thing I do also like about this is that they did add some of that counterplay within the Atlas now. There's not just the towers, there's also the corrupted zones along with the cleanse zones and everything. I was wanting something like that. That's very cool, and it has that big decision. Do I go for did I hear them right? Is it a determinist? You get a fracturing orb when you kill the boss of the cleansed area? Is that what they said? Like it's
No, it's not
deterministic?
deterministic, but it's
Nah.
RNG. They expect you to get about 1 on average.
One
if you
per biome, right?
optimize.
I'm never gonna
If
get
you
a
optimize
fracturing orb.
fracturing orbs, you'll average 1 per biome.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
That's
Mark.
Yeah.
All right. Sure, Jonathan. 65% chance for early access releasing this year. It's not happening.
Yeah, that's what I don't even know what does that even mean? Like, what?
I don't think Q1 2025 either.
Yeah,
2025.
probably not. Probably not. I'm sorry, I had to slip that in there somehow. Yeah, but the cleanse maps, they're looking pretty cool. I like them.
I think it's looked really cool. And I think the thing that they're demonstrating is that some of the ideas they've had that a lot of people said, oh, just scrap it completely, like just get rid of it. Some people say get rid of the towers, just get rid of the entire endgame and the atlas. I think that's that's not like a good approach. I think for example, the towers hopefully are better. The atlas itself is also something that could be really, really cool if they can get it to the right place.
Yep.
With towers, you're thinking, oh, I have to run 4 maps to get it and I'm missing them. They could possibly add in maybe another encounter that's like a highway and you just rush straight to it, then you can do all the maps. But then also with the Atlas, the difference between this and PoE1's Atlas is now you can visibly see points of interest on the Atlas. And this league, something it's like a good worry is what if there's like an essence map over there and a tower over there and then this cool unique map down there and this here? That's a good feeling when you're being forced to make a decision, but they are all good decisions. And hopefully they can get the balance to that point where any choice you make is a good one, but you're missing out on something by doing that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the part that made the PoE1 Atlas tree so good. Is that you want everything and you can't have all of it.
Exactly, but you're not wrong to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think if they can achieve that same feeling, then that'll be great.
I think they could.
Yeah.
With the unique maps or the end game maps that they've added, guys, this is exactly what I wanted, but I wasn't smart enough to like communicate it. All these interesting encounters, right, scattered across the Atlas. Oh, the boss gauntlet, the Lake of Calandra that actually I'm excited to run. Oh my goodness gracious. And there's 5 more, the Essence map, or there's 4 more that haven't been revealed. If those are common enough that I loved how Mark did not answer how common they were. He was like, oh, well, I think they're common. They're more common than I wanted them to be. Is that like, I hope I see them, right? I really do, because they were so cool. Like, that is exactly the sort of thing I'm looking for to break up the regular mapping experience. Oh. And they have unique rewards, too.
That's definitely something that this kind of Atlas, where you're doing, like, world exploration, that's really what it needs. I think I touched on that in the last podcast. Like, you need interesting things to stumble across. Like, if those things don't exist, then that whole design of, like, the exploration kind of world Atlas just doesn't really work, right? You got to have those fun things that you stumble across. So yeah, it seems like they're trying to put that in with this patch, and I'm sure they'll continue to add stuff like that in the future as well, which is that's cool. I like that.
And then in 5 years' time, we're gonna have Atlas bloat. People are gonna complain about Atlas bloat.
Yeah, too much stuff.
There's too much stuff on the Atlas.
Every other map that I run is a random mechanic. I don't like it.
They can't add too many though, because like the Essence map, for example, holy crap. I mean, it's going to print greater essences, especially if you're risky enough or powerful enough to fight the boss and juice it up, right? And same with the boss gauntlet. That's going to give you all those super strong runes as well, which we totally hopped over, by the way. I mean, they all have unique rewards, unique semi-deterministic rewards. Like, you're going to get something special running these maps, whether it's the unique jewelry and the Lake of Calandra or the other ones I just discussed. And there's 3 more. And I don't know if you guys paid attention in the trailer. They flashed through some Act 4 bosses. So we already see Phanos, which is an Act 5 boss, is used as the boss for the cleansed map center area. I can't remember what it's called. I also saw I think Dreamcore, I think it's one of your favorites, the pirate guy from Act 4 who randomly generates abilities. He was in the trailer. So I'm wondering if they're pulling in some ready to go assets from future acts into these endgame maps to
that
introduce
makes
new
sense,
content.
right? I actually feel like at this point they probably do have like Act 4 ready to go. Is that like I actually think they probably have it ready to go, but the reason why they're holding off now is because they do want to release all 3 acts at once and have it like a big
they
thing.
don't, dude. They don't. They
drop it all at once.
Jonathan came out and said, see, things are changing. He said, one, they have a giant team working on Act 4 now, which why? It looked very close to done in 2023. And 2, they want to release 1 act at a time now. Yeah, he said,
And
because if they released
tested.
multiple, they said it would be a balanced nightmare and progression nightmare. So now they want to do one at a time.
That makes sense. Yeah, that does make sense because they had before they actually launched the game, they had so much internal testing on like Act 1 and 2 especially.
Yeah.
So that would make sense that when they actually released early access initially, they already had the testing for the first 2 acts mostly done. So it was just like a case of if the 3rd act played into that and worked well, and it obviously ended up being quite good in terms of progression. But yeah, that makes sense. And I guess I think it is a better idea for them to release them one by one because they can get better testing and actually apply that feedback before moving on, right?
Definitely. Yep.
But so okay, 65% chance for full release this year, right? That would mean that they do have all 3 acts out, surely, right? Like, because didn't Jonathan say that full release would include all of the acts, but not necessarily all of the classes and ascendancies? Is that what he said?
That's kind of what he said. But in another interview, he was a little wishy-washy on Act 6, not being in early access. But
here's the thing, right? Like, they're treating the product as a full release right now. What's the rush to get 1.0 out? Like, is it just that they want that like giant release that they then have all the influx of like free to play players? Or because surely you only get 1 chance at that. You get 1 chance at the 1.0 release. Surely you want it to be the absolute best product you can put together, not a rush job. Not just.
I don't have a tinfoil hat. Where's my? I'll wear my tinfoil Kitava, okay? I'll wear Kitava on my head, okay? I've never bought into Tencent interfering with GGG. I think they saw that massive success of early access. Did you hear that they already recouped the cost of development PoE 2 with just the early access launch? I think Tencent saw that and they were like, let's get ready to monetize and as many players as possible, as soon as possible. Here is your deadline. And I think the reason Jonathan said they might not have all the acts in early access is because that is a lot longer to create than what they've already done with the acts. I don't think they have like Marauder and axes and swords like really tested right now. I think the acts though are probably in a good spot. So my Kitava hat is Tencent has set a deadline and they now have to hit it and they can't push as long as they want. Because I feel like if early access goes as it's been going now, it's going to be like probably 2026, end of the year or something. I don't know. Am I crazy?
True. Yeah.
Tell me if I'm crazy.
Yeah. If it's going at the current pace, probably end of 2026 at current pace.
I think there's a deadline.
36 ascendancies. Like I'm considering 36 ascendancies and 6 acts to be full release, and on that metric, I'm thinking like the earliest I think it could happen is middle of next year.
Yeah.
Unless there is just they've done a lot in the background.
It's possible.
Yeah, but coming into this spoiler season, I was thinking, right, there are 3 plausible scopes that Dawn of the Hunt could have. The first one, they put out 2 or 3 classes, they bring us up to about 24 total ascendancies, and they add Act 4. If this is the case, then we should expect full release around Christmas. The second possibility was that they have 2 classes, they bring us up to about 20 ascendancies, and maybe Act 4 is done, maybe it's not included. In this case, we're looking at Q2 of 2026. And the third case was the scope we got, +1 class, +5 ascendancies. And that was going to be more like Q3, Q4 of 26.
Yeah.
That said, they have changed what they've said about what constitutes the end of early access many times.
Right.
So whether it's coming from senior management or not, we don't know. But that's basically my thoughts, that they're just going to keep changing it. They'll decide what 1.0.0 is at some point.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think it's very hard to predict because everything, the goalposts are like changing, right? And I know I said this is like a reactionary patch, right? I feel like there's going to be more of those. Like I can't see this patch being, golden in the eyes of all the people who are going to play. I feel like there's going to be a lot of things that people are going to be like, oh, well, this is a problem now, that's a problem now, and they're going to make a lot of noise about it. And GGG are going to have to be like, okay, no, we're actually going to focus on adding, Act 4, a new class, another, like 2 classes, whatever, instead of fully focusing on what people are complaining about. Or maybe they won't. I don't know. It's a fascinating
we're always
going to
have that reactionary patch type thing if they don't do balance like after launch of a patch, like because there's always going to be broken things.
Yep.
So if they don't do that, there's always going to be this big reactionary patch that comes around, and we're going to get more of forget everything you know about PoE2 because everything's different again, because we had to go back to the drawing board on a few things, or completely gut some things, and some things were terrible, so we had to massively buff them. It's just if it goes back to the same point, like if you're not regularly balancing, then you don't really have that steady progression. You just kind of have sort of
right.
That's just what it's like though, right? If you keep balancing, you kind of get these regular tweaks and you get regular feedback, and you just don't have that if you don't do that.
Now
and
maybe
they can do.
Go ahead.
Go. Okay. Well, anyways, everyone's trying to yield there, but all right, I'll take it. Like, I reckon one of the things they could do that's really simple with balance. Does everyone on the panel agree that Chronomancer had insufficient damage in 010?
Yeah, it sounded like it. Silver played it. He's the only guy I knew, and he just fell off in tier 3 maps or something.
Like something that they could do with that they could have done with Chronomancer. I'm using as an example because we all agree it had insufficient damage. Is just said, right, okay, we need to do some serious work on this ascendancy. We don't have the time to do that right now. So what we're going to do is put every single notable in it is going to get plus 1% more total character damage. And if that's not enough to fix it, then in 2 weeks' time, we'll double that. If that's not enough, we'll up it to triple that baseline. And that's the sort of thing that would then get some real testing done over time. That's what you can do with the weak ascendancies. With the things that are too powerful, some things like Howler and the like, you just need to gut. But then that then creates a situation where, well, some of the other ascendancies now are going to be a little bit better than the others. Some are going to be a bit worse. If something's just a little bit better, that's okay. But if something's miles better, nerf it and do it in the middle of a league. And if something is miles behind, then just keep incrementally buffing it until it starts becoming compelling to some people. Even if it is just a boring buff like, 3-4% more damage, and just see how things work out. That'd be such a simple thing. And then you would actually be in a position to say, now, instead of going, okay, what does the meta look like without the 3 broken pillars? We don't know. So we're going to make mistakes. If they've done incremental balance, yeah. Anyways, rant aside. You go, Lolcohol. You wanted to say something. You're on mute.
I am muted. Yeah. Okay. I was
My
just
ears
gonna
didn't
say,
go out that time. Okay, thank God.
it wasn't you.
Geez.
I mean, it's perhaps a very deliberate choice that they're not doing the balance pass and doing overly reactionary. How do I put it? I mean, you're saying that this patch is a reaction to a lot of the feedback. Maybe if they are just doing everything on the fly, maybe they're worried they're going to make mistakes by being too, I don't know, how do I phrase it? By giving all the feedback time to kind of settle, and they can look at it from a distance. Maybe that's their justification for it, where they give things like a couple of months to settle before they just start changing and nerfing. And sorry, my brain is running at like I'm on about 20% mental capacity.
You're good, dude.
Right, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. I'm just trying to think why it's like that.
Well, I think every time they make changes, right? I'm guessing that they see a big dip in players, especially if players' builds are negatively impacted, because in the what do I call it, like information age, where people are like going on the internet, they're looking at Jung's builds and saying, oh my god, yeah, I gotta do cock, right? I gotta do like cast on freeze, right? I'm so sorry that I said that. I gotta do cast on freeze. I should just use cast on freeze as the example. I gotta do cast on freeze. Everybody specs to cast on freeze. It gets nerfed 4 days later, and then they can't clear a white pack of mobs, and they're pissed at the game. They don't have enough gold to respec, and they quit. I think that's what started happening, right? I think they just saw people quitting, and it comes back to them not being able to say, we're just going to give it to you for free. Which is what they used to do in PoE 1, by the way, during closed beta. I see the patch notes. They used to do full resets of trees when they made balance changes, which I don't know why they're not doing here. But I think they just kept seeing players dip, or maybe probably bigger than that. And they just said, okay, we're actually just going to do a big balance patch every 3. Do what we do with leagues. We'll get most of them back, or a good chunk of players back, right? We'll let them play with their fun toys and do the same thing over and over. Like they're just going to do the PoE 1 formula. That's what I'm guessing. Maybe that's what they're thinking, Lolcohol. Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Either way, I just hope they can settle on whatever they decide to do and do whatever's best for the game.
Yeah.
Which I mean I know they want to do what is best for the game, so there's probably justification behind it. But they don't have to communicate everything, especially when people are, not pulling up clips from 3 or 4 years ago and holding their feet to the fire over it.
Right.
I suspect that they're being deliberately a little bit more cagey. Maybe those interviews are a little bit more lighthearted and sort of waffly because they don't want to say exactly what they are thinking. Because if they say one thing, then do something else because the something else made sense, then they don't want to be held accountable for that. I think like people have held them accountable in very fair ways. I think there's been a few instances where they've been held accountable in extremely unfair ways. And I think all that does is it leads to them possibly just saying, you know what, we're not going to tell you. We're just going to do the updates every 3 months and pull feedback from there. No more roadmaps, no more balance manifestos.
No more Druid, right? No more Druid.
No more Druid.
It's gone.
Rip Druid.
I am so sure. Okay, so they were asked about the Druid in one of the other Q&As, and they said, we have no timeline. Dudes, it's going to be the last class. I swear. I swear.
2027.
I think maybe they ran into a snafu or something, but
How?
I don't know. I think originally it was the WASD with the forms completely effed them. That was I remember one of the devs talking about
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then
They just can't work out how to make the bear walk backwards. It just doesn't work.
It literally
they're done.
is impossible.
They're done. They're gonna have to delete the druid over that.
He just needs to get on his hind legs and do like a shuffle like this.
Oh,
unbearable. Yeah.
That'd be good. But what I really think it is, like, we saw a glimpse of it in that interview with Ziggy when they were talking about the Huntress and the fact that they said they had her done and then they like completely changed some stuff. They added the buckler, they added parrying, and then they reformatted exactly how all the skills were. I feel like that's been happening for 6 years, and now we're kind of privy to it, right? We weren't before. Like, they would go long periods of not saying anything. And I think that's just, it's public facing now, whereas it wasn't before. And it's kind of jarring to a lot of us because personally, I have been a gospel dude. I've been, GGG, you say something, I believe you. I'll shout it from the rooftops. And now the past 5 months, that's kind of like been proven false. Like, they've said a lot of things that they've changed, direction on, design decisions and what's releasing, what's not. And it's not a big deal at the end of the day, but I get why people may have been a little frustrated. That's it, right? With this announcement and how it was handled. So
yeah, I think they've gone from 10 out of 10 communication prior to Ultimatum in Path of Exile 1. Ultimatum comes along, they decide that they need to nerf Harvest to make the game better, and they get a tremendous backlash that gets whipped up by a couple of mirror crafters who are like, okay, we're losing our 10 mirrors week 1 strategies, we are going to start a riot about this. And they whip up a bunch of casual players by saying, this is targeting you, when actually it was targeting the mirror crafters. And they whip them up into a frenzy, and you end up with GGG having a post that's downvoted to like minus 8,000 on Reddit, which is why we are making surgical nerfs targeting the top 0.1% of the player base. And although that's not the way they worded it. And then after that, people realize that if you whip up a mob targeting GGG, you can get them to change things in ways that favor you in the game. And the community learnt that lesson, unfortunately. It'd be better if they hadn't. And now that's when the communication went from 10 of 10 to 7 of 10. I feel like it's dropped from 7 of 10 to 5 of 10 in the last, really in the last probably 13 or 14 months, I reckon. And it's been because I feel there's been project management failures that behind closed doors, GGG have known, okay, we're missing this milestone, but they've held out until the last moment before they've said that. I think people would be disappointed, but would be okay with it if Jonathan had come out at some point and said, hey, we've had to scrap 23,000 hours of work on something in Path of Exile 2 because of a major design decision where we've realized something works better. This means that we are now substantially behind. Here's our plan to fix this. 3.26 delayed, 0.2.0 delayed, But you need to communicate that far enough in advance that people aren't shocked by it. And then people are disappointed, but they're not furious. The thing is, it's clear that they have known that 020 was going to be later than a lot of people expected. Who knows when they actually decided that they had to push it to the 4th of April. I'm pretty sure that they were going for the 21st of March until even late in February. But then they just communicate things later, and that's kind of digging them a bit of a hole, whereas they used to have this reputation for integrity and for just giving the bad news when it's needed.
That was eloquently said.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that 100%. It's just like all the things that the information that we should be getting is coming much later than it is. Basically, that's like, for example, the PoE one, the video that was like the now infamous video, the 3 minutes of nothing, basically, Jonathan just saying nothing about PoE 1. We've got absolutely nothing. We've got nothing in return, And then obviously after the weekend, they then come back with the Freesia event plans. But that video, like, the information that was in that video should have come way earlier because they knew about this stuff. Like, it's not like a PoE 1 league was not going to appear magically out of nowhere. Okay, they need a long ass time to develop a PoE 1 league. We already know that, and they could have communicated that information like a month prior, right? So, yeah, I can't really agree with that more. The communication's not been great of late.
And I want to just imagine a different reality in which they'd said, okay, in December of last year, they'd said, hey, we're having some real problems with 3.26 for Path of Exile 1. What we've decided to do is contract the scope of it substantially. We are going to have a balance pass. We're going to add a few new scarabs, and we're going to introduce something that's just of the scale of Breach in terms of its complexity. Something that we know GGG could do that when they were 25% the size employees-wise that they are now, and then that Breach was prepared in 2 or 3 months and was released. Do something similar in scope, maybe even a bit smaller, and say, yeah, this is not the 3.26 you're wanting, it's the 3.25.5, but it's going to have a balance pass, it's going to freshen things up, and it's going to be better than us delaying until June because we are behind. If they'd done that, I think people would have been disappointed but not furious. And honestly, Freesia could have been 3.25.5. Could have been 3.26. It would have been fine. People would have been like, okay, this is cool. This is some stuff they've programmed in the past that didn't quite work, but that was sort of cool ideas and almost there.
Yeah, I bet the reaction, I mean, it's the whole goodwill conversation I think that some other people have talked about, where GGG, like you said, Gog, they were 10 out of 10 communication, 10 out of 10 development, design for so many years. I see a lot of people in the chat saying, yeah, they've done so well for like 13, 14 years, and now people are bringing up that they're doing so poorly now. Yeah, that's why we're bringing it up, because it's such a stark difference for everyone who's paid so much attention to, every live stream, every forum post, the manifestos they used to write. Like, I started playing in 2019. I went back and read manifestos from Chris and Jonathan written in like 2014, 2015. It used to be so different, and people noticed that, right? And they're going to bring it up. They're going to talk about it. Just, Gog, I think that would have been a good approach. And it is.
Yeah.
You say it was Ultimatum and what was it? Harvest? Dude, it was the streamer queues in Ultimatum, obviously. That was just the thing that pushed it over,
I think
that came later.
Also,
that was 3.14 launch, whereas
it was?
The Harvest Manifesto was like a couple of weeks before.
Oh, it was before?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Okay.
It was
so
mayhem.
It was the domino effect. Okay.
we've got a lot of players coming from other games who didn't necessarily play Path of Exile 1, and I'm
Right.
sure to them, Path of Exile, GG, their communication is probably like off the charts good.
True.
If you look at a game like CS2, that game has a rampant cheating problem, and Valve just, they do not say anything. The game has been out for 18 months. There is a very, very, very obvious problem that is like ruining, especially the high top end of the game. They say nothing. And it is like so frustrating. I don't even play it that much anymore. I don't run into cheaters, but it is so annoying that they don't say anything. So we need to acknowledge, like, we have been so spoiled. I wish it
True.
was better. I wish it was the way it was, but it could be so much worse. It
Yeah.
could be a million times worse. And I think like a lot of people are probably watching this who didn't play PoE1, watching all these like PoE1 streamers who are like, what are you guys talking about? Like they do like tweets and they do interviews and they're talking to Ghazi and Darth next week. Like, what the hell is wrong with these people? So yeah, we've just I know it's not as good as it was. I miss Bex too, all right? But it could be worse.
You're 100% sure. I come from Dota 2 and Guild Wars 2. Oh my
Dude,
god.
Nothing.
You-
Nothing.
Oh,
Just here's the patch by. See you in like
here's
6
a patch
months.
by. Yeah. Here's a random, cryptic tweet. Maybe there's a
Yeah,
patch coming.
exactly.
Just joking. It's actually 3 months from now. Gosh, Dota. Oh my god. Yeah. So way better.
Yeah.
Way better. Okay. My goodness gracious, guys. It has been about 2 hours. Was there anything else in the patch that we did not talk about that you guys wanted to discuss before that big release on April 4th? I know that there was a lot we didn't touch on, but is there anything that
There's
you really
so
wanted to
much.
discuss?
Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff.
I'm overwhelmed. Okay, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie.
We could chat for like 8 hours and we probably still wouldn't finish it all.
All right. So conclusion. What do you guys think? It's in the clickbait YouTube thumbnail. Do you think this is a huge patch or an underwhelming patch? What do you guys think? Let's start with Sirgog. What are your thoughts?
So prior to the announcement, my hype was 9 or 10. After the announcement, it was 8 or 10. So it's still pretty high. It fell down a little bit.
Pretty good. Above average.
I want to
Green's gonna
say that
torch us.
I was probably like maybe 7 out of 10 before the announcement because I wasn't really sure what to expect. Like, I think a lot of people are in that same boat with not really. It's really hard to get a grasp on what they're going to announce for PoE2, right? Especially after 4 months. Like, you can expect so much and you just don't know if you're in the right ballpark or whatever. But I would say that I'm excited for this patch, but not for the same things that I thought I was going to be excited about, because a lot of those things kind of didn't happen, and then there's a bunch of stuff that did happen that I wasn't expecting. So, but I'll temper my expectations until the patch notes, because the patch notes for me are the most important thing about this patch. Like, that's going to really give me the information that I want, that I really wanted in the reveal, right? I just want to know where they stand on the current balance in PoE2. What do they actually think about it? And obviously they're not going to say that in words, but they're going to give that in the numbers in the patch. So then we'll hopefully know exactly what they think. So yeah, I mean, either way, right? I'm hyped to log in. There's new stuff to play. There's lots of content to find in the end game. So I'm excited to play the game again for sure, because I haven't played it for quite a long time at this point. So
That's perfectly reasonable. That's a good one. That's a good one. All right, Lolcohol. Where's the 10 out of 10s? Come on. Just kidding.
Probably. I'll say I was weirdly more excited after the reveal than I was before it. So
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't know if I'm just like a glazing GG shill nerd, whatever. I don't know. I see there's so much stuff, man. And I've been playing PoE2 pretty much this whole time. It took a couple of weeks to play Freesia, but like there's so much stuff to play with. And I don't know if there's problems, we'll deal with it. But for now, like I really just want to focus on the good stuff for now. I had a stream the other day where I was just like, let's just ignore the bads, ignore the worries, ignore the concerns, just focus on all the cool stuff. And it makes it so much more obvious when you're not just like, you don't have that negativity bias. I'm not telling people to not be critical where needed, but like now, I feel like we're in the hype cycle, man. I don't want to feel bummed out when I log on to stream and then I just see like everyone complaining about this tiny issue and this tiny issue and this tiny issue. It all kind of like just builds up and it like damages your mental, man, over time as a streamer. Like I can't handle it. I would rather just people coming in and be like, dude, I'm so excited. This is so cool.
I totally get you. No, I was probably the pissiest I've ever been on camera watching the reveal because I was so fixated on the thing I think that Dreamcore and I were like most anticipated for. Like, all right, they're finally gonna take a stand and reveal their and I'm like watching this reveal. I'm like, okay, that's so cool. But does it like, okay, the tornadoes, Jonathan, the tornadoes, they look so cool. Am I gonna use the tornadoes, Jonathan? Am I gonna use it? That's what I was thinking the entire time. And I was being such a little bitch the entire time, right? And then we get 3.5 hours and Mark's just like, yeah, forget everything. And I'm like, thank you. Oh my gosh, really? That's happening? Because they tricked me. I thought they were just gonna be like, yeah, we're making some adjustments, but we're like fine with what it is for the most part. Sure, we're gonna nerf, Herald's Ingenuity, right? But no, they were like, no, everything's touched. All the ascendancies, Chronomancer's getting 2 new notables, and like I was at a 5 out of 10 until
they
3.5
could have
hours.
actually made like literally the reveal video could have been like 40 minutes longer with the information from the Q&A.
8 out of 10.
There was like so much information in the Q&A that could have gone into the reveal video, dude. What's going on there?
And people drop off, right? They drop off after that reveal, right? So
like, can you imagine that? Like, we've got 5 new ascendancies, and we're also adding all of these nodes to all the old ascendancies, and we're also balancing every skill. Every skill is balanced. Like, just
that was me. I'm very excited for Dawn of the Hunt, but man, they had me tricked. They had me fooled. They had me in the first 3/4, and then or whatever 4/5, and then they got me. They reeled me in. So I'm really excited to log in. I guess as the last little thing, you guys, what do you think you're gonna play? I know we don't have patch notes. I'm sorry, but like
Huntress.
Does anything
Obviously,
Huntress too? 100%.
Obviously.
Yeah.
I mean,
me too. Amazon.
You guys probably have smarter answers, right? Yeah.
Amazon, boy. Come on.
I'm going Zon. Java's on.
I'm probably going to play the Kitava Smith. I think that's a pretty cool looking ascendancy. I'll probably play something with that.
Looking forward to it.
But maybe I do something with... I really do like that life cannot change while you have energy shield node on the Lich. So maybe I mess around with that.
Right.
And I'm looking at... I think I'm like 60% to play Amazon. 20% to play Bind Spectre. No, they changed its name to Raise Spectre, didn't they? 20% to play Raise Spectre, and 20% to pick something else, which could be an existing or a new ascendancy. Of the ones, like the Smith of Kitava has definitely jumped out at me as interesting, but I feel like it's possibly... Well, maybe it's a good first character because you don't need to worry about getting a good chess piece.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys. We'll have all of our builds probably posted on Mobalytics, whatever we decide to play. This podcast will also be there. Thanks to them for juicing it up, and thank you guys for staying up late. Lolcohol, Dreamcore, and Sirgog, thanks for waking up not as early as you thought, but pretty early. I appreciate it. It was really fun.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
we'll get reactions.
Awesome chat with you guys.
Yeah, we'll get reactions in a few weeks' time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay sane.
Thanks all.